Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Drees, reporter for the Daily Memphian. This is On the Record. And we'll call this the Day After podcast since we record August 5th, 2022, the day after an election that put to rest the big ballot for another 8 years. But the decisions made in that election and their impact will be hanging around for quite a while in some cases. First, the turnout, which by the unofficial vote totals, specifically going with the turnout in the race for District Attorney General, comes in at 23.2%. That may change a bit once the results are certified. It's already changed from Friday morning before dawn to this recording late Friday afternoon. While the votes were being counted and counted after much delay Thursday, there were problems with how they were posted on the Election Commission's website. For instance, it was quite a while before the tab that is just the absentee votes was filled in. Meanwhile, there were totals posted for combined early absentee and election day votes, so it wasn't clear if the combined results posted with all 142 precincts were indeed the combined results. It turns out they weren't, by several hundred votes in some cases. It didn't change any outcomes, despite there being several close races out there that could be contested, although by state law the burden for that in general elections is on the losing candidate. They must prove irregularities and enough votes to change the outcome of the race. And it's done in a court challenge after the results are certified by the Shelby County Election Commission. Now about the turnout percentage of 23.2%. That is based on the unofficial tally of how many voted in the race for District Attorney General. The percentage is the lowest turnout for this election cycle in the 30 years that we've had partisan county primaries. And by election cycle, I mean the one that comes around every 8 years with a set of dozens of judicial races, and the one every 4 years with the same non-judicial county races, but not the regular judicial races. 4 years ago, there was a 27.7% turnout. 8 years ago, 27% even. The lowest turnout prior to this year for either one of these cycles was 25.5% for the August 1998 ballot. In the mayor's race, which was on the ballot 4 years ago, County Mayor Lee Harris, in running for the open seat with no incumbent, got more votes, and so did Republican nominee David Lenore, than Harris and this year's Republican challenger Worth Morgan did. Harris got 6,437 fewer votes this year than 4 years ago. Morgan got 11,813 less than Lenore, and Morgan had set Lenore's effort as a benchmark in many ways. The DA's race was last on the ballot in 2014, 8 years ago. Republican incumbent Amy Wyrick got 34,960, almost 35,000 more votes in 2014 than she did this August 4th. In winning the race, former County Commissioner Steve Mulroy, the Democratic nominee, got 26,067 more votes than Joe Brown, who was the Democratic nominee in 2014. But perhaps a better comparison, since it involves the same contenders, is the 2014 race for juvenile court judge, the last time it was on the ballot with the same top two contenders, Dan Michael and Tarek Sugarman. This is a nonpartisan race in that there are not party nominees, but for some time now, juvenile court judge has been a race that has defined the policy and ideological differences of Republicans and Democrats in our city. The local parties choose sides on this, and they're not on the same side. So Dan Michael, 8 years ago, when he won the office over Tarek Sugarman, got about 27,000 more votes than he did last night as we record. Sugarman, in winning the race last night, got 4,868 more votes 8 years ago in losing than he did in winning. There are a couple of factors in this. This year's juvenile court judge race featured two other candidates. It wasn't a one-on-one like it was 8 years ago. Deshaun Peoples and William Ray Glasgow, the other two contenders, brought in a combined 27,322 votes. The other thing to note here is ballot fall-off. About 14,500 fewer people voted in this race for any of the four contenders than voted in the race for district attorney. And the DA's race drew about 200 more voters than the county mayor's race. That's why we use the DA's race totals to calculate our unofficial voter turnout percentage. Local Republicans, in the post-mortem of all of this, may really focus on their decision to go for as many uncontested primary races in May as they could get. Some of the Republican nominees were already questioning the strategy way ahead of last night's results. For Democrats, this is about not looking at early voting turnout at city voting locations and correctly surmising a base that once was largely going to vote on Election Day has now made the transition to early voting. The question is how to keep it going to Election Day, which brings us to a very close statewide race in the Democratic primary for Tennessee governor. By the statewide unofficial results, Dr. Jason Martin of Nashville claimed the nomination and the right to challenge Republican Governor Bill Lee in November by 1,468 votes. That would be a close race if it were just a margin in a countywide or citywide race. And Martin's key Memphis rival in the Democratic primary, City Council member J.B. Smiley, did not immediately concede Thursday evening, citing the closeness of the vote, although by Friday morning he had conceded and had said he would support Martin's challenge of Lee. The difference in Democratic and Republican turnout statewide says a lot about the odds against that challenge of Lee by Martin. Incumbents who run unopposed are races that voters understandably tend to skip. There's really no decision there to make. In the statewide official vote tally, Lee, running unopposed in the Republican primary, drew just over 494,000 votes. The three-way Democratic field of Martin, Smiley, and Carnita Atwater, also of Memphis, drew a total turnout of 257,000. As expected, Shelby County was Smiley's best showing in any of the 95 counties across the state. He carried the county with 48,604 votes to 17,998 for Martin and 12,559 for Atwater. He also carried neighboring Fayette, Haywood, and Tipton counties, as well as Madison and Hamilton. Martin, meanwhile, carried 88 of the 95 counties in Tennessee, Knox and Davidson in his column. Back to Smiley's Shelby County total, it's just 1,620 votes more than Lee got unopposed in the Shelby County Republican primary in the bluest county in the state. Lee was in the city Election Day for several meetings, including a stop at Tennessee Highway Patrol headquarters to tout plans to beef up the THP presence on the city's interstate system, also posting a video on social media after lunch at the Four-Way Grill and some pictures from a walk around Beale Street. More on these and other points from the unofficial Thursday election returns in the Daily Memphian article that includes this podcast. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.